This is a video from artist Seak Claus Winkler. This video is, as all other things I'm communicating or promoting or sending out or letting out or releasing, are art performances and pieces of art. You know, art freedom, Kunstfreiheit. Consider this. So I'm filming here my canvases, my paintings. From the backside, I influenced with my style in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then onward from that. From there, all around the world, lots of graffiti writers who became artists or were already artists or graphic designers, art directors, creatives, tattoo artists, anything. And influence them with my style, my technique. And I usually painted, because I painted my style on walls. So what you're seeing here are literally like miniatures. I was in magazines and books and television reports and newspapers. And I painted a lot on hip-hop jams back then. We had like lots of hip-hop jams and festivals. That was long before the term street art became popular. In fact, the word Seak with the E and the A maybe inspired people to establish the word street art, because Claus Winkler means also to steal something to then get an advantage. You know, the word street art was established to basically create new power structures and to a more popular way of marketing everything, and to take away the image from the graffiti artist away, you know, because there you needed street credibility and everything and own style, and with street art anything goes, and any art student can pretend like to do something and benefit from that edgy graffiti image and stuff like that. I didn't paint it too much illegal pieces or tags, which was always a street credibility issue, as you can imagine, if you think a little bit deeper. But I thought, okay, I must reimburse that or balance that out with being innovative, to also have my reason or to contribute something, to put something in, to give something back, and So I thought, okay, then I must go in with originality and unconventional ways of painting. And I came up with, I integrated everything I liked, which was absolutely unappropriated from an old school graffiti, like a first generation graffiti writer's point of view, or of like most people who were like doing graffiti in the 1990s, you know, in the early 1990s or before. The first time I spray painted, for example, and sketched was in the late 80s. I would say this. So I, in the 90s, integrated everything which I already liked into my style. So what was my influence when I was a child, or in my youth, or in my teens, in the years before? That was, for example, my Amiga 500. I was already years before in a subculture, which was the Amiga 500 copying, swapping, copied and cracked computer games subculture. So I was very much into the aesthetic of the computer games of Amiga 500. It was like the graphic computer of the mid 80s. Like, it was like, imagine having an iPhone 17 Super Max, or whatever it's these days called, like 8 years ago, something like that. Or 10 years ago. It has this kind of impact in terms of graphic and aesthetic and possibilities. It was like a quantum jump from C64 or Atari ST to Amiga 500. Well, the Atari ST people probably now will be like going completely nuts because the Atari was close. But anyways, so this like upgrade in aesthetic and graphic, also for me, just entering puberty was visible. You know what I mean? Like children, we are like, you know, we get it. So this urge or need for good optics and great aesthetics and graphics is reflected here in my paintings, you know. This like, you want to have this level, which takes up a lot of energy. And back then, everything was like old school graffiti, like the New York late 70s, early 80s graffiti. So with my aesthetic of keeping it or making it 3D, organic, futuristic, having no problem or being in ease when I've integrated things which look maybe like a dildo or like a laser weapon or a piercing or anything pro-German nationalistic, like on a subliminal level. Like, for example, I have this certain way of painting my case which look like the German eagle or the Air Force wing, if you will. It's the American empire copied more or less a lot from Germany too. I mean, just mentioning Operation Paperclip here. For those who don't know about history, I was also very much into history and into weapons and marine aesthetics, marine history and military history when I was a child, long before puberty, also like plane history. So all this came into my style when I started to make my style in the 90s more personal, more own. And probably this like, you have to paint like this and like that, like this is real, you have to keep it real, blah, blah, blah. You know, this kind of like only fired up my rebellious streak. Years before, when I was, a few years before, when I was living on the countryside, I also had the Confederate States stars and bars, the battle flag from the Confederate States on my jacket. So like rebellion was, plus I had the flag of the rising sun of Japan, Heiko Tenno Banzai, in my room, as well as the North German imperial flag from the Marine war flag, Marinereichskriegsflagge from we had till the end of the Weimar Republic, or till 1933. I don't know. I have to double check because it was the more beautiful flag. The other Marine war flag, which we had then, I considered not so beautiful. That was my only reason why I didn't choose that. Plus probably also the red and the middle part with the in Germany forbidden element didn't look as good and as nice or difficile or sensitive, artistic as the German eagle. That was my decision. Or yeah, otherwise, yeah. That was also my, yeah. So anyway, so just to give you a glimpse. So like, and there you have already like a strong symbol which is like really detailed and beautifully painted and decorated. And then now, a few years later, I mean, back then I was already into graffiti and stuff like that, you know, and I was sketching and everything. So it's kind of like all connected to each other, you know. You have like a beautiful German eagle on the German Marinereichskriegsflag, and which is very detailed and, for example, the eagle we had after 1945, which is, I don't have any emotional connection. I'll be careful, I have to say this, because Germany the leftists have new laws, interpretation, they control the justice system with rubber paragraphs and their own personal opinion, how they see the state. So I have, I've never had really, yeah, I mean The, so anyway, so this were influences. There were also comic books. I was a huge fan of the Franco-Belgian comics or the Brazilian Spanish comics. I don't know. It was like Manara, you know Manara, this comic series with like this naked Latina or Spanish woman living in this dystopian alien world, or Blueberry, Möbius and stuff like that. Really great, the Blueberry comics from Sergeant and Lieutenant Blueberry and stuff. And all this kind of, and all the, Franco-Belgian comic scene culture. So this is like all the influences I like. Plus I thought I make my weakness into my advantage, barriers to benefits, because I was new in the scene in a way, or new coming up. I wanted to come up. So, and everyone was painting sharp with outlines, so I decided, let's paint 3D organic. Plus, I also always liked this 3D color depth from dark to light, intense colors from the Amiga 500 compared to like the Pixel C64 Commodore graphics from the computer generation or system before. So yeah, and then I just started with that, and that was like pure avant-garde. What else was my influence? Yeah, also the cuddle animals I had, like Stofftiere, like the stuff. I had like all kinds of different cuddle animals when I was a child. So probably that's how I came up with the fur thing. Because my letters also look like organic. I mean, here in those paintings here it isn't, but I have lots of paintings, and you see them, also the old paintings, they look like my paintings are having some kind of like fur, fell, would you say, like, or hair, which is also, the one reason is that it's easy when you paint fast, everything is around, it start to look not very clean and crisp. And with this, you can basically create, you can make this that it looks like it's on purpose. And plus, it's created an interesting blend or mixture, because it's also something positive, I also had like an animal when I was till in my early 20s. My guinea pig, which also had a cuddly fur. So I had like a positive association with that. And I was also following the medium of the spray can, which is like round shapes, And so it takes effort to paint something sharp with a spray can, especially when you paint in the 90s with spray cans, because that weren't the spray cans and the quality we are having now. Back then it was like an art form to have a color, to know which color from which brand you can use, which covers a surface, especially for example yellow. And then if you don't have that knowledge, or even with that knowledge, you needed for each color a certain technique, depending what you had, to make it that it can cover a surface. It was like, you needed like skills. Or when in the 80s, I was heating up my, the original caps I got from the supermarket from some hairspray with needles, to then put it inside so that I can have thinner lines. And my mom then found those needles and was like shocked if it would have any drugs or anything, something like that, And then in the 90s, the graffiti or the spray cans had already a better quality, so the whole thing became much more easily accessible for everybody. It's like it became like mainstream in a way. So you also had like kind of like an inventor pioneer mindset, which so what else was influencing my style? Comics. I had like a rich history knowledge. I don't know if that was integrated into my style. At some point I thought it was okay or good to integrate anything extreme and taboo or perceived as negative or whatever. And that came also out of the context that graffiti was perceived as something you normally don't do, you know, and that's illegal and negative and you are bad, la-di-da-di-da, and spray cans are not made to paint something like this, you should use a brush, blah, 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 or anything else, you know. And this also goes along with the word Claus, which means like also to steal something. It has like a criminal streak. In a way that amplified bad boy mindset. Plus you are in a scene, in a subculture where you have to, most of the people are stealing the spray cans, but I wanted to have as much spray cans as possible. So stealing was, I don't know, because I was stealing one time in my teens, trying to steal a computer game, like a test computer game diskette. It was like a CD-ROM, basically, like an early CD-ROM, but on like something between a tape and a CD-ROM, like diskette. It's like this was just with test games on it in a computer game, basically like an advertisement thing in a magazine. And they caught me in Cologne in a large supermarket, I think Kaufhof or something like that, like a large mall-like shop. And I was so ashamed by being caught stealing, someone whose name is Claus is ashamed of stealing, that that I didn't want to spill later on spray cans. Plus, I wanted to have it in such a large scale that I thought maybe it's better to then paint commercial jobs, like custom jobs, to finance the paint spray paint, because it's like super expensive. Back then, spray cans were like super expensive. So I started to make it in somehow that I could buy spray cans or laboratory, like cheaper spray cans or larger quantities at the producer of spray cans. There was like a company Sparva here in Düren, this is near Aachen, where the Battle of the Bulge was. Düren was also leveled by the Americans in World War II after the Battle of the Bulge or during it. Now it's, you can imagine how it is now. Those Barber cans compared to what spray cans are these days, they are like water. It's horrible, you know. But back then, and it was an option. Then I had like here in the cellar, my grandmother was hiding for me the spray cans. I had a full room, and my grandmother tricked my father for many years because he wanted to know what's in that room, and she pretended like she forgot where the keys are and stuff like that, because she was having my back, so I could have the spray cans here for painting. So she taught my father a lesson in loyalty. There you go. So like when you have your father in the early years against what you are doing, it's a good way to harden up. And because, you know, if everyone is like kissing your ass and supporting you and stuff like that, that maybe doesn't make a strong, stubborn person. Because for example, I'm from East Prussia ethnically, and they are like in parts, and they are like super stubborn. Like it's like they say the Westphalians in Germany are stubborn, but the Westphalians, this is my quote, when the Westphalian, when there's an East Prussian, the Westphalian are standing next to it and making notes how stubbornness goes. Like those like staff officers and senior officers and generals, when Il Jong Kim says some wise words about military, and they're standing next to him and making notes like schoolboys and wanting to know everything, something like that. What else? What else influenced me, consciously or unconsciously? I kind of like also, I like the word Seak is like also a power thing. It kind of amplifies everything degenerate, but also the other way around. And I think on a subconscious level that goes along with me knowing about Bolshevik, about that we are occupied, that the leftists turn anything good into negative, and it's basically like everything positive, you know, till 1945 was turned again from leftists and from the people behind them into negative, and the negative is a good thing, you know, like, you know, fat, obese, degenerate, anti-own people, la di da di da di da is good, you know. Like, you know the story, you know. I don't want to have to. So basically, if you want to have an influence, and my thought was, okay, the people rather drink tea, which is the people who, the intelligentsia, the people with sense, and the other people then consume. This is just an example I had in my mind. Consume negative stuff like alcohol, for example, which then in the end escalates when you from humans. The most decadent and destructive is then cocaine. So basically, I thought my art will steer people just from the words, you know, from the words and my name and everything, and either one way or the other way, and they can then choose for themselves. And in the word Seak, it sounds also like the German word Sieg, which means victory, you know. Yeah, so you have, I mean, you hang the painting high, and, you know, Seek, can't say it, you know. It's, but this, for example, I just reckoned like in my late 20s or early 30s by coincidence, like, because then I started reverse engineering things, and it's interesting how the subconscious or the sublime works indirectly. So what else inspired me? There's probably lots of things, and the stuff I mentioned here, which inspired me for my style, it's just what I'm reckoning right now. There's probably much more that inspires me, but I don't know, you know. For example, what inspires me definitely, and I think you can see it here, is the computer game R-Type, you know. When you fly it's a shoot 'em up game, where you fly from left to right, get extra weapons, your ship gets larger and better, everything is add-on, you know, and then in the end you fight like an end boss and you get into the next level. And my stuff already almost looks like this, you know. It's like the parallel is there. And I mean, here was the desk for my grandfather, where his office, private office. And he had my computer one time in the summer. That must be in the late 90s. In the late 80s, where I was then in summer holiday spending with my grandparents, and I was playing computer, I was addicted to this computer game R-Type, and was also waiting for R-Type 2, and I was like completely obsessed with it. I even bought it as an original, which says a lot, because back then I could pride myself in a very fast having Amiga games like with Mega Trainer cracked in a few hours. Not that I cracked them, but I had like good contacts. It was very well connected. It's always, yeah. So this like aesthetic or mindset, I kind of like was my agenda, or my one major key factor in how I painted, why I paint and stuff like that, which kept me maybe also on painting graffiti or painting my name. And then there was the movie, what's the name? Sie leben, they live, you know, with like obey, you know, with like sleep, consume, you know. And I reckoned that in a time where I also reckoned about, this is anti-Nazi evil, blah, 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 right is bad, blah, 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 and all the anti-white propaganda they had in school. And I did some research, because I did like pro-national, pro-German, pro-white symbols in my illustrations. This is here before, and when I was in Realschule, in middle school, in high school. And then I came up also, and then parallel came this movie, They Live. And that also inspired me that I want, and with the word seek, I mean, you could also, I mean, the word seek takes up that energy from that movie to amplify. You should seek basically for those glasses or for the Matrix, or to go deeper and to basically behave like the guys in the movie They Live and start like waking up. Interestingly, when I was in Miami, or like I was exhibiting when I was coming up in the graffiti world and getting like was already internationally famous, but then the fame went further. Probably also inspired Obey's Giant. Back then he was named as Shepard Fairey. I also exhibited with him a few times when I was at his studio then later. That he changed his name. Probably I assume, because I know what effect I have on people, that he then changed his name or project name from Shepard Fairey has a posse into Obey, because and with this they basically amplifies the other way, like in terms of you should submit. He's catering to the overlords in a way. At least that's how I see it. Well, on the other hand, people are rebellion, but look at most people these days, they're not rebelling, they're submitting and committing, and yeah. Anyways, so I'm always like influencing other people indirectly, and the influence is huge. Like I can tell you stories which I can't tell you, especially because it involves politics here, where with what I'm doing here influenced German actual politics, and then it makes me like think, okay, how must I continue painting like this, that certain people in German politics do this, and yeah, and I have a few contacts who keeps me updated, who also come from a subcultural old right-wing background, so they I know I can trust them. And so I support them. And they then sometimes I need a few days to digest the informations, or then I see the patterns, and then like my influence is indirect. This is like, it's like I'm not benefiting from it. If I would benefit probably from it, I would have be loaded up now with so much money or anything that I would be also behaving neutral or anything, and being like one of those system drones we have in Germany, and everyone is putting their head away and doing nothing, or going with the state narrative, which is absolutely disgusting. I'm here in my censorship talk modus, so I can't tell what I really think. You just get a glimpse of how you think I'm thinking and what words I use. This is nothing. This is a role I'm playing here. This is completely a public persona out of legal reasons. Yeah, it's just to let you know that, So yeah, influence, inspiration. So the whole revolution or rebellious thing we also had in the graph scene long before. We were always, when you come from that background in art, you're always the underdog, the outsider, because everyone wants to down in art. Everybody fights every art direction or niche fights against the other art niche for attention, for value, for recognition, for money, for status, for authority. And everybody is obviously shitting on people from the graffiti, street art, whatever world. And while they're all having very few to less, because in the art, usually the artists who are benefiting are selected up front before they even really start, by a few super rich people, because then they know where they invest their money. This is the other truth bomb. So basically, the whole underdog thing, that nobody gives a shit and everybody treats you like shit, and nobody cares, that's baseline emotion, And then you have in the scene, of course, also rebellion, because everybody in different mindsets and schools and thought, and everybody's protecting their style or aesthetic turf, while, there's like a saying like, the king in graffiti is someone you want to fight with or paint with, and that's a quote from a famous old school graffiti writer from like a generation or two before me. I don't know which was it. I think it was like someone from New York. Yeah, and I have all the excuses. I mean, I painted with a lot of people in my career, like hundreds of people. But I have to finish my paintings here, and this is like my excuse. And this is like already, most people you see in art, they have like assistants, they have like lots of assistants, large studios, where they also have people who coordinate their assistants, and then they have like people they invite into their studios to teach their assistants certain specific skills, plus painting them certain elements those own assistants can't paint. And I'm doing everything by myself. It's completely nuts. And it's like, I'm like Don Quixote fighting against windmills, or I'm like Pony Express trying to be faster than the Western Railroad. Something like that. Or, so Pickett's charge running into the Union lines, but the Union lines have Gatling machine guns. Something like that. So and I thought also that this painting it by myself is healthy for my psyche and because I know my weaknesses and how lazy I am and how undisciplined, and so this helps me grounding myself also in ego, because it's like it's work. I must do the work my own and it's humbling in any way,